Yesterday I asked you, would you be willing to get into that wheelbarrow if you were asked, and it didn't make sense? Would you follow God with the same faith of getting into that wheelbarrow and going across the tightrope? Today here on day 4, we're going to jump into Acts chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, talking about Ananias and Sapphira. And right here we see in verse 1, it says, there was a man named Ananias who had a wife, Sapphira. Together they sold some property. He brought part of his money to the apostles, but he claimed it was the full amount. His wife agreed to this deception. In the early church, people were selling their land and bringing the money to the apostles to help others. Nobody was forced to sell their land. It was just a decision between them and God. But I'm sure making this sacrifice bolstered their reputation in the eyes of the community for making such a great sacrifice. Maybe Ananias and Sapphira were thinking that they would like to have their reputation built up. Maybe they wanted to help, but were also fighting off the temptation of greed. Who knows what they were thinking, but whatever it was the wrong thing. In verse 3, then Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart? You lied to the Holy Spirit and you kept some of the money for yourself. The property was yours to sell or not to sell as you wished. And after selling it, the money was yours to give away. How could you do a thing like this? You weren't lying to us, but to God. As soon as Ananias heard these words, he fell to the floor and died. Everyone heard about this and was terrified. Then some young man wrapped him in a sheet and took him out and buried him. Ananias must have been making it look like he was giving more than he was. Like he had made this sale and he was trying to make it look like everything. He probably thought that he could get all the glory for selling his land and still keep a portion of the profit. But Ananias could not outsmart God, and he paid the price for trying to do so. Jumping back over here in Acts chapter 5, verse 7. About 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter asked her, was this the price that you and your husband received for your land? Yes, she replied. That was the price. And Peter said, how could you even think of doing a thing like this? Conspiring together to test the Spirit of the Lord? Just outside that door are the young men who buried your dead husband, and they will carry you out too. Instantly she fell to the floor and died as well. When the young men came in and saw that she was dead, they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear gripped the entire church and all the others that had heard and seen what had happened. Sapphira was truly in a difficult place, but Scripture says she knew full well what her husband was doing. She wasn't in the blind. When she arrived, Peter asked her about the money. She was left with the option to either stick with her husband or stick with God. She chose to stick with her husband, and she paid the price for it. This was truly one of those what were they thinking moments. Before we jump in too hard on Ananias and Sapphira, we must all realize that we all have what were you thinking moments. Maybe you need to be challenged right now. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Stinking thinking will lead to an emotion commotion, which will usher in a collision of all your major decisions. Line up with God. Be consumed and in fear of all that He is and all that He can do. I pray that this would be your prayer today. God bless.